What's up? I'm Jacob Blitzo, your Elixir mentor. Today we are going to deploy our Phoenix LiveView app on Gigalixir. We will even point to a custom domain and let Gigalixir worry about fetching our SSL certificates for us. Gigalixir sponsors this video. Gigalixir is a platform as a service built exclusively for Elixir, which is fully featured and production stable. It saves you money and unlocks the full potential of Elixir and Phoenix without requiring you to build production infrastructure or handle maintenance and operations. For more details, please visit gigalixir.com. You can also try Gigalixir for free without using a credit card. Let's dive right in and open up our terminal with command space terminal enter. Now, I'm going to use Brew to install their CLI. I prefer installing any tool that I can with Brew. Let's go ahead and just pull up Gigalixir's Getting Started guide. And if you go ahead and just click on Getting Started, you can see the prereqs here if you want to install it with Mac OS, Linux, or Windows. So you can use Python if you prefer, and it will walk you through the steps. But for now, I am going to go ahead and install it with Brew. And so I'm going to just do Brew, tap, and then Gigalixir/Brew, and then go ahead and do a Brew install Gigalixir, and then hit enter. And so it says I already have it installed, but that is how you will do it. And then to verify that it's installed, you can just do Gigalixir space -- help. And if you see all the options here, we know it's been successfully installed. Now, if you don't have a Gigalixir account already, you can just do Gigalixir sign up, and it will walk you through everything right here in the terminal. I already have an account, so I'm not going to go through that process. And if you prefer to sign up through Google, you can just do Gigalixir sign up : and then do Google. And it will run you through everything here as well. I'm not going to do that, but if you are signing up, that's the process that you'll do. Now, I'm already signed up, so I'm going to log in with Gigalixir login. And then all you have to do is use your email. So jacob@elixirmentor.com. And then the password and paste here. And would I like to save my API key? Yes. All right. So I am now logged in. And to verify that you're logged in, you can just now do Gigalixir account. And you will see your API key, any credit sense that you have, the email to your account, and what tier account that you have. So we're going to be using Mix with Gigalixir. So if you're just getting started to create a new app, you would click on Phoenix with Mix. Or if you're modifying an existing app, you can click on Mix and walk through everything here. Now, obviously, you'll see here that we have to have Erlang, Elixir, and Node all installed. And if you want to see how to install these using ASDF, check out my video on that in Elixir Basics, and I'll link that on the screen right now. Now let's go ahead and open up our GitHub gist clone project. So if we pull up our terminal, and I'm going to CD into Documents, Development, Elixir Mentor, and then our gist clone. Gigalixir uses a build pack system. So we have to set versions of our Elixir, Erlang, and Node versions, and Phoenix. And obviously, since we've been developing a while, we already have our Phoenix framework installed. But if this is your first time doing that, you can run through their steps and install Phoenix and create a new Phoenix project and all of that good stuff. But those steps you can see in previous videos, like creating the project of the gist clone. The first video in that series will walk you through creating our Phoenix application. And then that ASDF installation video from Elixir Basics will teach you how to install all of our Erlang, our Elixir, and our Node versions, okay? Gigalixir, if you see here, Gigalixir uses a build pack system. So we have to set the versions of our Elixir, Erlang, Phoenix, and Node And following along with this documentation, you'll see we have to create an Elixir build pack configuration and a Phoenix static build pack configuration file. Now, to see our current versions of all these, we can just pull up our terminal and type in ASDF list. And just like that, you can see I'm running 1.16.1 Elixir, 26.2.2 for Erlang, and 21.6.2 for Node. So let's go ahead and copy this code that is going to create our config files, okay? So if we go right here, we can just go ahead and copy these 3 lines, boom, and then in our terminal, when we're in our project, remember, paste these, and I just want to make sure that we have our versions updated. So I need to use 6.2 for Node, and everything else is good here. So 26.2.2, and then Elixir is 1.16.1. All right, great. So what these are going to do is this is going to insert Elixir version on our Elixir build pack config, and Erlang version in that same config, and then it's going to put a Node version in a Phoenix static build pack config file. So when I hit enter here, there it goes. It created those files and put those values in there. So let's go ahead and open up VS Code just to verify that they're there. I'm going to just close all these tabs so they're not in our way. And let's go ahead and just find our... Okay, so we just created our Elixir build pack with Elixir version and Erlang version, and then the Phoenix static build pack with the Node version, just like the documentation said. Now, Gigalixir has ES-build installed, but we need to tell the build packs how to compile our assets. And since Gigalixir is node driven, we actually have to use our package JSON to have the script to deploy our app properly. If we go back into the documentation right here, you need to be careful. We can't just copy and paste this code out of the guide because we're already using package.json and we're using that for our highlight.js dependency. So what we want to do is just copy the scripts up to the first closing curly brace. So inside here, or I'm sorry, right underneath echo, we just want to copy the scripts. So from that curly brace to the closing curly brace, because if you copy this whole thing, it's going to overwrite our package JSON in our project, because this is doing the same thing we did above, where it's creating a package JSON and then inserting this script. Okay, so if we go back into our project now and we expand assets, and you'll see we already have our package JSON because we have our highlight.js dependency. So inside the outer curly braces, above dependencies, we can paste our script. And then we're going to need a comma after the closing curly brace on scripts. And now Gigalixir will know how to deploy our app. So we can save this. All right, now we need to open up our runtime.exs config file. And that is in the config directory here, and runtime is right down here. And what we're going to need to do is we need to find our elixirgist.repo config, which is right here on line 33. And we need to uncomment this. We need SSL to be set to true. And I'll talk about these in a second. And then we're going to need one more thing, and it's called SSL_ops, so options. And inside of a square curly brace, so inside of a list, we need a key. Inside of a key value list, we need the key to be verify. And then we need an atom called verify none. And then go ahead and put a comma at the end of that list and save it. Now, the SSL true, this line enables SSL encryption for our database connections in a Phoenix application, ensuring that data transmitted between the app and the database is encrypted for security. And now the SSL options, where we're verifying none, this line specifies options for SSL connections. This is disabling certificate verification It means that while SSL is used for encryption, the identity of the server is not checked, which can be useful in certain environments like development or testing, but is not recommended for production. So due to security concerns, you do want to have self-signed certificates made. But now for the length of this video, we don't want it to get ridiculous. This is going to have to be a subject saved for a future video, and we'll go through how you generate a private key, create a CSR, and then use that to create a self-signed certificate and configure your database. But for now, let's just go ahead and continue with setting up just to get our app deployed to Gigalixir. And that's all we have to do in our runtime config. But now we have to open up our prod.exs config file. We want to add force SSL to our endpoint config. So if we come right here, we are going to want to space down for just readability reasons. And we want to add the key force underscore SSL. And then inside of square brackets, we need to have the rewrite underscore on key. And then inside of another square brackets, we need to have X underscore forwarded underscore proto, and then close off those brackets. And then let's throw a comma at the end there so we don't make the compiler angry. And so the configuration force SSL, the rewrite on and the forwarded, the X forwarded proto in a Phoenix app tells the app to redirect any HTTP requests to HTTPS, but only if the X forwarded proto header indicates the request originally came in over HTTP. This is particularly useful when your app is behind a proxy or load balancer that handles SSL termination, ensuring secure HTTPS communication is maintained. Okay, now that we have everything set up and we're forcing SSL so everything will be over HTTPS, we can commit our changes to Git. So Gigalixir deploys using Git from our main or master branch. So I'm just going to save this. And if we pull up our terminal, if I do a Git status here, all right, we have all of our configuration done. So I'm going to say Git add, and then I'm going to say Git commit -m, and we'll do a commit message. We'll say Gigalixir configuration and SSL setup, and then I'll hit enter and then do a git push origin deployment. All right, so now that hits GitHub, and I'm going to go ahead and merge this into our master branch. Okay, now that we have deployment merged into main, we can now say git checkout main, and I can do a git pull origin main, and we'll pull down those changes. All right. Okay, now that we have our configuration and main branch, we're ready to create our Gigalixir app. So we have to create an app for our Phoenix project, and we also have to create a database because our Phoenix project requires a database. I'm going to show you two options here. I'm going to show you how to create a free database. And now the only downside to the free database is you can only have 2 concurrent connections. So it's great if you're just testing a little project, but if you want this in production and plan to have more than 2 concurrent connections, you're going to have to use one of their standard tier databases. And I'll link their pricing URL in the description below. Now, this is how you create a new Gigalixir app. And if you don't include a name after creating it, it will randomly generate one for you. So to create an app, we're just going to do Gigalixir create. And if I just hit enter here, it would just create the app and assign us a random name. But if I do -n and I can pass in a name after it, so I'm going to call this Elixir Gist. When I hit enter, it went ahead and created our Elixir Gist app. It's important to note that you cannot change this name after the app is created. So if you want to change the name, you have to delete the app and deploy a new app. So now let's create our database. Now, if you do a -free, that is the free version. It won't cost you anything. It just limits your connections. I'm going to do the smallest standard tier database. which is 0.6 gigabytes of memory and a storage limit of 25 gigabytes. So if you wanted to create one with the free tier, you would do Gigalixir space PG :create and then space -- free. Okay, that'll do your free one. And that's probably what most of you will want to do when you're testing this out. But if I do -- size equals 0.6, they have their tier sizes in their documentation. Let's pull that up. If I go to standard tier, you can see that this is the command, so create -- size, but the standard tiers are 0.6 and all these numbers. So whatever you want to do, and then you can see database pricing right here. And I'm just doing the smallest database tier. So when I hit enter now, it will create a new database for us. Now we can verify that our environment variables were set too. So just like our app was created, right? So if I do Gigalixir config, you're going to see that we have two environment variables. We have a database URL and then our pool size. So Gigalixir automatically made those for us, which is really cool. And now at this point, we're ready to deploy our app. So if we just do git push space -u, and then we say Gigalixir main. So we're pushing, it uses our git main branch, and then it's pushing any changes that are different. If what we were pushing from main did not vary from what was already deployed on Gigalixir, it would tell us that no changes were made and it won't do it. But the fact that this is our first time deploying, it's going to deploy now. Okay, so now that it's deployed, you can see that we got our URL back. Let's see, right here where it is the curl. So it gave us back our app name .gigalixirapp.com. So if we go ahead and copy this, we can paste this into our browser and we should see our app. We have to wait a little bit. While we're waiting, we can also check our deployment status. So let's go ahead and try Gigalixir PS-A and then the name of our app. And you will see that our status is healthy here. Now let's see if everything's up and running. And there we go. So our app is up and running. This is pretty cool, but we have an error message. So what's going on? If we inspect this, you're going to see that, look at that, we're getting a WebSocket connection error. So this is a connection error, which is a CORS error. So we actually have to add a check origin list of what URLs are allowed to connect over our socket. So let's go back to our app and we're going to open up our prod.exs file again. So let's go ahead and pull up. Okay, we're in our prod.exs file. So underneath our force SSL, we are going to add a check origin. So check _ origin. And inside of this needs to be square brackets. And then we need to, inside of quotations, have our, whoops, that's not what we want. We need to have our URL there. So let's go ahead and just copy this URL and paste that here. And then we're also going to want to add our URL. So we can go ahead and do URL, and then inside of square brackets as well, we're going to do our host, and our host is also that URL, okay? And then after that, put a comma, and our scheme needs to be HTTPS. Whoop, that needs to be a colon, not a comma. And our port needs to be 443. And then put a comma at the end. And we also need a comma after check origin. All right. So now let's go ahead and save this. And we are already on our main branch, which is kind of a naughty tactic. But I'm going to say go ahead and git add, git commit, and say we adjusted our endpoint config for CORS. And now if we go ahead and push to Gigalixir main again, it will rebuild our project. Okay, great. And so that built, and let's pull up our browser again, and let's go ahead and refresh this. It might take a minute. Okay, we're up and running, and we're not getting any more errors. So that's pretty sweet. Okay, so now before we hit our database with creating an account or signing in, we have to run our database migrations. All we have to do is say Gigalixir space PS : and then say migrate. And there we go. It ran our migrations, which is good to see. Now we should be able to sign up, number one. So Jacob at elixirmentor.com and then Elixir Mentor, hit enter. And we're getting an error here because we haven't configured our email server. And in development mode, we were just using Phoenix's fake inbox. And so it's trying to communicate with an email server that isn't set up properly. So that error is what happened, because normally we go to like a confirmation window. But for now, we'll just go ahead and sign in and worry about that email later. So Jacob at elixirmentor.com and then Elixir Mentor. And look at that. There we go. We logged in. We have our success, and we should be able to create our first gist, and then we'll say our first.ex, and let's go ahead and paste some code here. And let's just paste our repo config. And let's go ahead and hit create. And look at that. So our code is working. We created a gist, we created an account. We can copy, we can edit. Really cool. We can delete if we wanted to. And our project is up and running live. Okay, so everything is working. We can log in, we can register accounts, and we can use our app, which is really cool. What if we want to set a custom domain because we don't want to just use a random URL? So what if we wanted this app available at a subdomain of my Elixir Mentor domain? Gigalixir makes this really easy. All we have to do is go to our terminal, and all we have to do is say Gigalixir domains : add, and then space, and then the domain that you want to add. And we'll put this on a subdomain of Elixir Mentor. So gist.elixirmentor.com. Hit enter. And there we go. They added gist.elixirmentor, and now they tell us that we have to create a CNAME or alias record on our DNS provider pointing to gist.elixirmentor.com.elixirdns.com. Okay. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to do this off camera, but I'm going to my DigitalOcean and I'm creating a CNAME that points to this. Okay. That's what I'm doing. Okay, so I added the CNAME to my DNS records, and now we're accessing our app from another domain. So we have to make a little bit of an adjustment with our check origin and our main URL. So if we go back to our runtime, no, we have to go back to our prod.exs. All right, and right above this, we're going to set two variables. We're going to have our host, and we're going to use system.getEnvironment, env, and then we're going to call the key of this environment variable, which will be phx_host, all caps. And if this is false, we want it to default to elixirmentor.com. And then we also are going to do the gig host, which will be our URL from Gigalixir. So we're going to have both of them on our check origin list. So get_environment, and we'll call this one gig_host. And if this is nil or doesn't exist for some reason, we'll also send it to elixirmentor.com. And now all we have to do here is, instead of our host URL here, let's delete this and we can say host. And I'm going to copy this string so we don't have to remember it later. But I'm going to just cut that so it's on my clipboard. And then all we have to do here is host and gig host. We can just list them both in this list and we're good to go. So now we do have to set our environment variables with Gigalixir. So our PHX host will be gist.elixirmentor.com, and then our gig host will make the URL Gigalixir automatically assigned to us. Now, if you noticed, I used environment variables, and we're not actually putting our URLs here. So now I'll show you how to add environment variables to Gigalixir, because you don't want to have important variables, API keys, or anything like that in your code base, especially something that's open source, because people can be malicious with that stuff. So you want it all in a config file or hidden away, and Gigalixir makes it nice and easy for us to do that. All we have to do is pull up our terminal, and if you do Gigalixir config, you'll see our two environment variables that already exist, right? And then we can just do Gigalixir config : set phx _host equals, no spaces, and then we're going to do https : / gist.elixirmentor.com, and then I'm going to hit enter. Gigalixir config set, and then we're going to do gig _ host equals, and then I'm pasting our URL from Gigalixir here. And then I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to restart. So if we did Gigalixir config, Gigalixir config, oh my gosh. All right, Gigalixir config. You now see that we have our gig host and our PHX host set. So we now have access to these environment variables. Now I should mention that if you want to remove any of these, you can do Gigalixir config : unset, followed by the key that you want to unset. And that would remove it. But I don't want to do that. But if you did, that's how we would remove our PHX host, okay? Oh, I forgot to submit these changes. So git add, git commit -m, added environment variables for CORS. All right, and now let's go ahead and rebuild this right here. All right, now that is built, and we'll just give it a few seconds here. We can check our status, Gigalixir PS, and you can see that there's still 2 instances of our app. And we'll just wait a second until there's just 1 there. So our new instance is up, and this one is still terminating. And once that terminating one is gone, our new app is deployed. Okay, now if we go to our browser, our subdomain should be good to go. So gist.elixirmentor.com. And okay, an error, we must log in to access this page. That's because we have that set up in our route. But if I go to jacob@elixirmentor.com, and let's log in with Elixir Mentor. Look at that. So our subdomain is now working, which is really cool. And everything is HTTPS, all thanks to Gigalixir automatically getting our certificates for us. So it stops us from having to do that, which is really nice. A few things you should know. We kind of touched on this, but let's say you are deploying changes where you've modified your Ecto schemas, or you just have database migrations. To run those anytime, you'll probably get like a weird internal server error, like a 500, if you forget to run your migration errors. So you'll want to do Gigalixir PS : migrate, and that will run your migrations if there are any to do. Another good one to know is ps:/restart. If you want to restart your app for whatever reason, you might need to. And then another one is Gigalixir apps:/activity. And you can see everything that happened with this app. So we created it. There was a release, restart, release. So you can see the activity, and then you can also do Gigalixir logs. And this will show you all the console logs. So if you have any debugging or like IO puts or anything like that where you want to track logs, you can see them here. And then you can Control-CC to get out of that. Deploying our Phoenix app not only went really smoothly, but was super fast to do as well. We got our project, database, and custom domain with SSL certs up and running really quickly. Gigalixir is the only platform that fully supports Elixir and Phoenix. Unlock the full power of Elixir and Phoenix. No infrastructure, maintenance, or operations. Make sure you start using Gigalixir to deploy your Elixir Phoenix applications. If you want to learn more or are interested in using Gigalixir, check out the link in the description below. Join my Discord channel, Elixir Mentor, if you have questions or just want to hang out and chat. That link is in the description as well. If you want to learn how to build scalable, production-ready, full-stack, and REST API solutions, hit that subscribe button now. I'm Jacob Litzo, your Elixir Mentor. See you in the next video.